At my own birthday dinner, my mother leaned across the table with that practiced smile she wore like a crown, the kind that made every whisper sound like an order. "While everyone's here," she murmured toward my father, "tell your son to head over and change the locks at her apartment." The sound of forks and glasses froze midair. Nathan didn't pause, didn't ask why, didn't even look at me. He just stood up and walked out like it was completely normal to invade your sister's life on the one night meant to celebrate her. For the next hour, the laughter around the table thinned into hushed conversations, little pockets of tension pretending to be casual. When he finally returned, his face was drained of color, his hands curled tight like he was holding on to something he couldn't explain. "Mom," he said, voice trembling, "there's something." Her smile vanished so fast it looked ripped off her face. And in that instant, my gut told me whatever he'd seen at my apartment wasn't meant for him to discover. People imagine family as something warm. They picture birthday candles glowing on a cake, arms around shoulders, voices filled with love and celebration. Mine always looked that way from the outside. Perfect holiday photos, matching outfits, lists of accomplishments recited like rehearsed lines. But in reality, everything in our family was a stage play, and my mother, Mrs. Reeves, directed every moment. My father hovered beside her like an investor who'd put too much money into a project to pull out now. And Nathan, he was her golden script, the favored role, the one she never let falter. Since childhood, I learned my part. Don't make noise, don't embarrass her, don't take up space. If Nathan forgot a birthday, she said he was busy. If I missed a single dinner, she called me ungrateful. No matter what happened, blame fit me like a custom-made coat. I used to think that if I accomplished enough, if I made myself flawless, maybe she'd glance at me the way she always looked at him. But power doesn't loosen its grip when you succeed. It simply reshapes itself to keep you beneath it. That night at the restaurant, I could tell she had planned everything, from the way she directed the seating to the moment she ordered that whisper. Nathan placed next to Dad, me across from her like a spectator. Even the cake was Nathan's favorite flavor, not mine. When she said, "while everyone's here," she didn't mean convenience. She wanted an audience. She wanted witnesses. She wanted to prove she still controlled every inch of my life. Dad didn't push back. He rarely did. Years of avoiding conflict had turned him into little more than an echo beside her. "Do it after dessert," he said, as if assigning Nathan to buy milk. And Nathan, eager to stay in his role, nodded and left. I remember tracing my thumb along my water glass, pretending I hadn't heard a thing, while a quiet fire lit in my chest. Change the locks. Why? What reason could justify that? I had lived in my own place for 3 years, a small Portland apartment where I raised my son Liam with whatever peace I could create. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine, my haven. And only I had a key. Or so I thought. While Nathan was gone, I sat still. Mom continued chatting with relatives, her voice light and sugary like she hadn't just initiated a violation of my privacy. Dad sipped his wine, offering me a tired smile that wasn't apology, wasn't comfort, wasn't anything. I escaped to the restroom just to breathe. The mirror showed a composed woman with steady lipstick and smooth hair, but beneath it all, I felt the pressure pounding behind my ribs. When I returned, an hour had crawled by. Nathan stood near the table, pale as candle wax, hands shaking. Mom leaned toward him. "What is it?" His voice cracked. "There's police tape around her door." The table fell silent. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Somewhere inside me, something old and heavy turned over. Whatever had happened, this dinner was only the beginning. The drive back to my apartment felt stretched thin, like time was elongating itself on purpose. Streetlights reflected on the windshield in cold flickers, each flash tightening the knot in my stomach. My phone buzzed over and over, Mom's name, Dad's, even Nathan's, but I let them all ring. The world outside my car felt normal, but nothing in me was. When I reached my building, Two police cruisers sat parked near the entrance, their lights pulsing blue and red across the brick walls like warning signs. I barely remember shutting my car door before an officer approached. "Miss Reeves?" "I'm Officer Grant. Do you live in Unit 214? "Yes," I answered, though the word felt far away. "What's going on?" He flipped through notes on a small pad. "We received a call about a forced entry. Your door was damaged, but nothing appears stolen. We've sealed the apartment until we finish investigating." "A break-in? Who would do that?" He hesitated. "Does anyone have keys?" My throat tightened. "My brother, Nathan Reeves." His eyes sharpened. "And why would your brother have keys to your residence?" I swallowed. "Because my mother told him to change the locks." His pen stopped mid-stroke. "She told him to do what?" I forced the words out. "She told him to go in, without my permission." He wrote something down slowly, then said, "We'll check the building's cameras. It's best if you don't stay alone tonight." But I didn't step away. Through the cracked door, I could see my living room frozen in dim yellow light. Nothing broken, nothing stolen, but something was wrong. Then I saw it. The framed photos of me and Liam all turned face down against the wall, one after another, like someone had been walking through the room with purpose. "Officer," I said softly, "those pictures." He stepped inside, flashlight sweeping across the room. On the coffee table lay a single white envelope, crisp and unsettling. He handed me gloves. "Go ahead, open it." Inside was a small piece of paper with a typed message. "Tell your mother the truth always finds its way home." My hands shook around the page. Officer Grant studied my reaction. "Does this mean anything to you?" I whispered no, but deep inside, I knew those words weren't meant for me. They were for her. My mother's grip on everything she controlled was beginning to slip, and she hadn't realized it yet. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the envelope reappeared like it was burned into the inside of my mind. By morning, rain slammed against the windows, sharp and uneven as if the sky wanted to make sure I stayed awake. When the phone rang, I expected Mom's fury. Instead, it was Officer Grant again. "Ms. Reeves, we traced a payment connected to the break-in. It went to a man named Thomas Hale, the building's maintenance helper. The transfer came from a bank account under your mother's name." My breath stalled. "You're absolutely certain?" "The timing and the note match. We believe she hired him to retrieve something from your apartment." "Retrieve what?" I asked, even though the answer was already forming in the back of my mind. "We're still working on that, but I suggest you speak with her carefully." After the call, I sat on my bed, unable to move. My mother had always obsessed over appearance and respectability, but this was different. This was a crime. I thought about the cardboard box in my closet, the one labeled Dad's business papers. I had found it last month while reorganizing. Inside were deeds, tax documents, wires, contracts, all with my name on them, signatures that looked too neat to be mine. I had convinced myself it was a clerical mix-up, but now it was clear those were shields, hiding transactions my mother never planned for me to see. By late afternoon, I knew what I had to do. I texted her one sentence: "Dinner. My place. 7. No excuses." Her response came seconds later. "Fine, but be ready for the truth." When 7 struck, her knock echoed through the apartment. Light, calculated, exactly like her. She walked inside with perfume trailing behind her like smoke. "You shouldn't have dragged the police into this," she said coolly. I folded my arms. "And you shouldn't have hired someone to break into my home." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what's unfolding." "Then tell me." She scanned the room, noticing the overturned photos. "Those documents you saw, your father's business is complicated. Partnerships, investments, matters that need to stay hidden. Thomas was supposed to retrieve them before you made a mistake." A laugh slipped from me, low and bitter. "You mean before I realized you used my name as a cover for your fraud?" Her eyes sharpened. "Watch your tone, Evelyn." But I didn't flinch. "No, Mom. Watch yours." Thunder cracked above us, rolling across the sky like something ancient waking up. Rain streaked uneven lines across the windows, glowing under the streetlights. She stood in the center of my living room, flawless as ever. Heels, pearls, hair arranged without a single strand out of place. If guilt had a uniform, she wore it perfectly. "I was trying to protect you," she said, voice softening like she wanted to rewrite the last 24 hours. I tilted my head. "By breaking into my apartment?" "You don't understand," she hissed, pacing now. "If those papers had been discovered, they could destroy us." "Us?" I asked quietly. "Or just you?" Her gaze hardened. "Don't twist this. Everything your father and I have done was for this family's future." I almost laughed again. "You forged my name on property files. You never secured our future. You hid the truth." Her voice rose above the storm. "You think you're a victim. Every opportunity you ever had came from us. College tuition, your first car, that apartment. Do you think any of that appeared out of thin air?" I met her eyes. "I paid for that apartment myself. You just couldn't stand that something existed in my life without your fingerprint on top of it." For the first time, her expression flickered. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Fear of losing control. She turned toward the window, hiding it. "Evelyn, listen to me carefully. If those documents go public, your father could face prison time." I folded my arms. Maybe he should. She spun back around. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did," I said softly. "Officer Grant has them." Her face drained of color. "What?" "You wanted the truth out of my house. I delivered it to the police." Lightning flashed across the glass, bright enough to cut her silhouette in half. For a moment, she didn't look like my mother anymore, just a woman cornered by her own lies. "You're destroying your family," she whispered. I stepped closer. "No, Mom. You did that. The moment you used me as your shield." She shook her head, stepping back as if I'd struck her. "You don't understand what you're doing." "I do," I said. "I'm setting boundaries, something you never taught me how to do." The air between us thickened. Every word, every silence, every wound we'd both ignored was suddenly there, alive, breathing. Her eyes glistened not with tears, but rage. "You think you're strong because you've got the law on your side. You're naive. The world doesn't care about your little revenge." I looked at her steadily. "It's not revenge, Mom. It's accountability." She laughed, cold and brittle. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But at least it'll be my regret." The room went quiet except for the rain. Somewhere outside, a car horn echoed, distant and hollow. She stood there, chest rising and falling fast, like she was about to lunge or cry or both. Finally, she said it. "If you go through with this, you'll never have a family again." I met her gaze. "Then maybe it's time I build one worth having." She froze, her face hardened mask sliding back into place. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the door. The click of her heels against the hardwood was the sound of a legacy breaking apart. Before she reached the handle, I said, "One more thing." She stopped, didn't turn. "You asked why someone flipped the photos in my apartment." I said, "Maybe because even strangers can tell which way is right side up." Her hand trembled just once before she pulled the door open and disappeared into the storm. The sound of thunder followed her out. For a long time, I stood there, watching the door sway slightly from the draft. My hand shook, not from fear, but from release.
I walked to the table where the envelope still lay. I picked it up, tore it in half, then dropped it into the trash. This time, silence didn't feel like surrender. It felt like ownership. The next morning, I met Officer Grant at the station. My hair was still damp, the air outside heavy with leftover rain. He greeted me with a small nod. "You're sure about this?" "I'm done covering for them," I said. He slid a folder toward me. Inside were photos of the documents, copies of the bank statements, and confirmation that my parents' assets were being frozen pending investigation. "Once this goes to the Financial Crimes Division, they'll open a full case. You'll be cleared of all liability." I exhaled slowly. "Good." He hesitated. "You know this will make headlines." "I know," I said. "But at least they'll be true." By the time I left the precinct, the clouds had started to break apart. Sunlight spilled through in thin, uneven rays, the kind that look hesitant, like they're not sure they belong yet. When I got to the hospital to pick up Liam, he was waiting with a sticker on his shirt, a gold star. He ran straight into my arms. "Mom, look, I got a sticker for being brave." I smiled. "So did I, sweetheart. You just can't see mine yet." He giggled, not understanding. And for once, I didn't need him to. We drove home in silence, his little hand resting on my arm. The world outside smelled clean, washed new. When we got back, I made pancakes, the kind he liked with too much syrup and not enough patience. He talked about school, his friends, how he wanted to build a rocket in the backyard, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like something was chasing me. There were still calls I hadn't returned, messages from reporters I didn't plan to answer. Let them talk. The truth didn't need my permission anymore. That night, after Liam went to bed, I stood by the window again. The city lights blinked in the distance, reflected in the rain, still clinging to the glass. I thought about my parents, not with anger this time, but clarity. They taught me the difference between love and control, between loyalty and silence.
And somewhere between their lies and my truth, I'd finally found myself. The next morning, I walked into the post office with one final envelope in my hand. Inside were the remaining documents linking my parents' offshore accounts. No note, no message, just the truth. When I sealed it, I whispered, "This ends here." Outside, the air was bright, cool, honest. I turned toward the street where my car waited, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood: peace. News travels fast when scandal smells like money. Within a week, every local outlet had picked up the story. Prominent couple under federal review for identity fraud. My phone lit up nonstop. Journalists, lawyers, relatives pretending to check in. I didn't answer a single one. The world could speculate all it wanted. I was done explaining myself. The apartment was quiet now. The flipped photos had been rehung, every frame straightened. Liam's laughter filled the space where fear used to echo. Sometimes, late at night, I still caught myself expecting the phone to ring with her name on it. But it never did. Not out of guilt, out of shame. Dad resigned from his company the same day the investigation became public. The firm released a one-line statement about health reasons. Mom vanished from her social circles, her charity events, her book club. For a woman who lived off appearances, silence was the only punishment that fit. Officer Grant called a few days later. "You've been fully cleared, Miss Reeves. The case is moving forward." "Thank you," I said, "for believing me." He paused. "You didn't need me to believe you. You just needed to believe yourself." After we hung up, I looked around my living room, the same one that had been invaded, violated, reclaimed. The air felt lighter, like the space itself was breathing again. I poured a cup of coffee and opened the window. Outside, the city sounded alive. Horns, footsteps, the soft hum of a place that didn't care who you used to be. That weekend, I invited a few friends over for dinner, people who had stayed when everything fell apart. We didn't talk about my parents. We didn't have to.
Nana raised her glass and said, "To freedom, and to never apologizing for protecting yourself." I smiled. "I'll drink to that." Later, after everyone left, I tucked Liam into bed. He mumbled, half asleep, "Are we safe now, Mum?" I brushed his hair back. "Yes, baby, we are." He sighed and drifted off. And for the first time in years, I didn't doubt the words that came out of my mouth. The next morning, sunlight poured through the kitchen window, soft and gold. Liam sat at the table, kicking his legs, syrup on his cheek. I flipped pancakes, watching the light move across the floor like it was tracing new boundaries, ones that finally belonged to me. I'd spent years trying to keep the peace. Turns out, peace isn't something you keep, it's something you claim. As I poured coffee, I looked at my son and smiled. "This time," I said softly, "the locks stay mine." If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after family betrayal, share your story below and hit subscribe. You're not alone.